All right, awesome. Well, hey everybody. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll go ahead and click through these real quick, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions probably. I'm not heavy on slides in general, and I really like to hear what people are wondering and thinking about from the audience. All right, so just a little bit about me. I'm Hudson, he, him pronouns. I have lived in Dallas for 10 or 11 years now, really North Dallas, but in the general area. I went to school at the University of North Texas in Denton, and then from there worked at USAA from 2014 to 2016, helping start up their blockchain program. From 2016 till now, I've worked at the Ethereum Foundation. I do a variety of things at the Ethereum Foundation. Primarily, I consider myself like a protocol developer liaison. So what that means is I do some stuff at the between like communicating with the community to the protocol developers so that they know what the community wants and what needs to be going on. I also do some stuff in DevOps as well as dealing with DevCon that happens every year, which is a large conference we'll talk about later in this presentation. So let's do a quick overview of Ethereum. I'm not going to dive into too much of the technicals in this part, but hopefully a lot of people have heard about this. For the in the beginning, Vitalik Buterin created Ethereum. He thought of it in late 2013, and it launched in July 2015 after a successful crowd sale and a lot of attention and hype around the fact that you can have a blockchain that now has smart contracts on it. Smart contracts being these scripts, these decentralized open source like programs that are run on this virtual machine, the Ethereum virtual machine, that allow you to, rather than just like in Bitcoin, you can, transfer a coin back and forth, and that's kind of a single use or very few uses for the use case. In Ethereum, you want to take that idea and put programs on it. So instead of having just one use case, you can have many use cases across many different industries and types of things you want to do. dApps are decentralized apps. When I refer to that during the presentation, that's just smart contract functionality built into applications, allowing a bunch of use cases like censorship resistant messaging, decentralized insurance and identity, and other stuff like that. Because Ethereum is such a large ecosystem, we have a lot of development going on in parallel. So there's Ethereum 1.0 and 1.x, which is kind of considered the current state of Ethereum. Like if you were to go and to log on to the Ethereum network today with a smart contract account, or with a normal account and interact with smart contracts, you'd be dealing with Ethereum 1.0. It uses proof of work mining, which is similar to what Bitcoin uses. Ethereum 1x improves on 1.0, and it's a research area more than anything else that they research cutting edge technology that could go into 1.0, and then we bring it into 1.0 using network upgrades. Some of that's also going to be integrated into Ethereum 2.0, which is a complete overhaul of the Ethereum 1.0 to implement proof of stake, consensus mechanisms, and sharding, which we'll talk about a little later on in the presentation. Layer 2 are technologies that are outside of the core Ethereum protocol, but live right on top of it and help with scalability and a few other things that, blockchains might be lacking when it comes to throughput of transactions, number of transactions per second, things like that. It's a very helpful subcategory of technologies that I'll bring up a little bit as we talk about some of the pitfalls that come with building a blockchain. So let's talk a little bit about what Ethereum is today. Some of the things that I think are really great about Ethereum are there's a lot of activity and experiments around dApps, especially decentralized finance. That's been really hot right now. If you go to Forbes online, I think they have an article on DeFi. If you want to read about it, it kind of goes over it. There's also a big community that is very, very unique, I feel like, to the blockchain space. It's very welcoming. It's not very like toxic or anything like that as far as I've encountered. Granted, I'm very biased. I'm in the middle of the community, being one of the community managers, but I do think we bring something special to the table as far as the community presence, and we're going to have some slides going over that later as well. Some issues with Ethereum today, especially in the last month, we've had incredibly high transaction fees, and that's contributing to a lot of state bloat, which means as more people use the blockchain grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And every computer that wants to connect to the blockchain has to load the entire chain into their computer. So that causes a lot of, causes some people to sweat, because what if it gets too big and it's not, feasible for many computers to have the blockchain? Then it's not as distributed, and then it's not as decentralized. Transaction fees also suck because that cost money, and we don't really want people to be having to pay a ton of money to use the blockchain. Right now, that's the case. That's really the case that you're going to have with any blockchain that has a lot of usage. That is something that we're going to be working towards, and I'm going to talk about some of the solutions we're coming up with. One of them being putting things on the layer 2, which is the layer right on top of Ethereum. So if I'm wanting to interact with an application or a dApp on Ethereum, instead of actually doing everything on chain, so every single time I want to interact, I talk to the blockchain, we can extrapolate that and put it on a layer 2 solution. And that layer 2 solution can act as kind of a in-between, cheaper layer of storage and transaction accessibility on top of the main chain, so that you can still have some of the safety and security of the main chain with some trade-offs that allow you to have faster transactions, more scalable transactions, et cetera. For usability, there's also challenges behind that. Onboarding people to a new technology is always really tough for any project, but especially for blockchain technology that's very different and has a lot of nuances that you wouldn't normally see. So I was talking a little bit about scalability, and here's the scalability trilemma graph that I like. You're looking at, you can only pick 2 out of 3 of this triangle. There's decentralization, scalability, and what I usually call security. In this case, in this graphic, it's consistency, which is all nodes see the same data at the same time. And you can only have 2 out of 3 of these really well. What we're working to do is to really try to have all 3 of them, but that's not going to happen in bigger scale until Ethereum 2.0 primarily. There is some work in Ethereum 1.0 to address this, but it's not something that is going to be primary on the agenda, because the current Ethereum network has a lot of network upkeep that has to happen. So that comes number 1, the security and stability of the network, and then we're trying to work on scalability at the protocol layer. So for Ethereum's future, we just talked about, Ethereum 1.0, how we have some issues there. So what does Ethereum 2.0 bring? Until then, we're going to have layer 2 to rely on. But with Ethereum 2.0, there are going to be some major enhancements that's going to help things for scalability and things like energy efficiency. So when you have a blockchain, you have to have a way to come to consensus about transactions that are going into the chain. You have to have a way to bundle them and to choose who's going to verify them in a way that's decentralized. So for Bitcoin and the Ethereum we have today, we have proof of work, which some of you might be familiar with. Computers solve really, really hard math problems, and and a combination of solving those problems and a little bit of randomness comes up with who gets the reward for bundling the transactions into blocks and verifying them. And proof of stake, it's like virtual mining. So you just have a bunch of people who are randomly picked to go into the pool of transactions, pick and bundle transactions and approve of them and verify them. I'm going to talk a little bit about the staking mechanism of proof of stake, because I think that's really interesting in a slide or two. That's going to come up with some opportunities you have in the ecosystem with this new proof of stake paradigm. The other thing is, when you have proof of work mining, it causes a lot of wasteful energy. It produces a lot of heat and energy that, just kind of just gets wasted. It doesn't really contribute to anything except the protocol itself and the security of the protocol. So instead of that, if it's with this virtual proof of stake, it doesn't actually expound any extra energy. It's all virtual. This is currently in testing, the proof of stake mechanism. We have a testnet open called the Medasha testnet, and that has a lot of different clients all pretending like they're staking on a real network. And that is part of the phase 0 launch that's going to launch at the end of this year to enable staking on the Ethereum network. I'll talk more about the phases later on. The other piece of Ethereum 2.0 that's highly popularized is sharding. This helps increase scalability. So instead of every computer having to store the entire blockchain on it, the entire state and memory and everything, it's just storing a piece of it. There's 64 partitions, and your computer is only storing a portion of those partitions. Stakers who signed up to stake ETH create shard blocks, and the backbone of this whole sharding and proof of stake ecosystem is the beacon chain. The beacon chain is a separate chain from the ETH 2.0 shard chain that allows you to organize these transactions and these validators and stakers that are on the network doing these activities and collect them and get them together to properly be organized. The specification for this is being written. Most of it is actually pretty well understood and pretty done. And this will roll into phase 1 and phase 2, expected to launch in 2021 or 2022. Hopefully phase 1 is 2021. We're not big on roadmaps because we like to put security first and make sure that we have all our I's dotted and T's crossed before we do any real release dates. But we're hoping 2021 or 2022 for phase 1 and 2. Is the current estimate. That's always changing, so don't go to your major public newspaper and say it's launching at this date, because we've had people do that and it just doesn't always work out that way. Here's kind of a diagram of what I've been talking about. The proof of work main chain, or the anchor layer, is going to be what the beacon chain latches onto right now, the coordination layer. The shard chains are going to be the ETH 2.0 piece of this, along with the beacon chain. That's the data layer where transactions at the execution layer are organized and bundled into blocks and then put into shards. The shards communicate using cross-shard communication. And yeah, that's that. I like this diagram a lot. I think it kind of visually gives you an idea of what's going on. So outside of the technology itself and kind of the nitty gritty, I want to talk about some of the opportunities as maybe someone who is in the Dallas area has for blockchain technology, and specifically Ethereum. So if you're more technically minded and you want to become a developer, you can build these decentralized applications using Solidity, which is the primary smart contract programming language built, influenced by C++, Python, and JavaScript. It's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's not like a really, really hard language because it's a simple language. If you've done low-level development and high-level development, like a combination, then you're going to be just fine doing this. It has some idiosyncrasies that you'll need to look at the documentation about, but I was a Solidity developer for a number of years, and I found it was really fascinating to get on the ground floor of a new technology and a new software development language. The dApp front ends are usually based in JavaScript. It's very web forward. And although you can also build it in Java and Ruby and .NET and stuff like that, a lot of the way people interact with Ethereum is through JavaScript front ends. So if you're familiar with creating really awesome front end UI programming, jump in, because there's a lot of really interesting challenges around usability with getting people used to using this new Web3 versus Web2 paradigm. Tooling for Solidity exists across many different platforms. A lot of your favorite IDEs have Solidity plugins, including Microsoft Visual Studio. And from there's just a lot of different resources you can use. Feel free to reach out to me. I have my contact information at the end of this. And I can always lead you in the right direction. By the way, as I'm presenting, if you have questions, feel free to populate them in the track session area. I know Erica has already submitted one. Thank you, Erica. And at the end of this, I'll leave some time open for questions. So we were talking about staking. So for proof of stake, there's going to be virtual miners like I was talking about. These virtual miners that are generally called validators on the network or stakers are paid to perform to sign rules to secure the network, which is like bundling transactions, validating transactions, making sure that other validators aren't cheating. So as long as you have 32 Ether, which actually right now is a pretty large amount of money, but there are ways that you can maybe have less Ether and bundle together with other people to like make a combined single staker on the network. That's still in development right now, but there should be opportunities to put a few Ether together with some other people and combine it all. As long as you do that and you have a client that stays online, you don't close the program and it's just always online, and you don't cheat, which, I mean, you don't want to do that anyway. Cheating's bad. But if you don't do anything to like try to skirt around the rules of the network to get more reward, then you get rewarded with participation rewards through Ether. Here's some stuff about the staking rewards. I won't read through all of it, but basically, the more you stake, or the more people who stake, that affects the amount of network issuance every year of validating Ether, and that also affects the annual return rate. But right now, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of numbers about 14% APY return for staking every year, which is really pretty good as far as investments go. The risk you do have is, unless you're staking with like a centralized service, you're going to have your program all the time. And once you put your Ether in, it's locked until phase 1 or 2. So your Ether will be stuck and you can't do anything with it. It just collects interest over time. So it's like a locked in interest bearing asset that is locked for at least a year or 2. Another thing you can do, if you're not interested in becoming a developer or a staker, you can become a researcher if you have some background in that. This is also a little more on the technical side, but also has some kind of things in economics, cryptography, other fields. Lots of opportunities for those in the security field to become smart contract auditors and protocol auditors. We're seeing a huge need for that right now. The Ethereum Foundation and other orgs are constantly looking for talent. So reach out if you feel like you're interested in this area or interested in becoming an Ethereum researcher. I'd love to hear from you. So as an entrepreneur in the Dallas area, like what kinds of things can you build on Ethereum? What things have been built? And what can you look at over the next few years to be kind of looking out for to jump in at the right time? I'm going to go over some use cases and give some examples of stuff that's been built today. So the first example that's live today is prediction markets. The most widely known one on Ethereum is called Augur. And it's a way to bet on upcoming events. And there's a lot of study around whether prediction markets actually predict the future or not. And there's some people who believe one way or another, but at the end of the day, it is a really interesting way to kind of do, like future prediction and see where like the whole crowd is trending. The reason you'd want to do this in a decentralized way and with a blockchain is because it allows there to be a lot of transparency around the whole initiative. Someone can't go in and manipulate the numbers. It's all on there on the blockchain. And so far it's been working pretty well. However, right now it's very expensive to use. So a lot of people aren't doing it because the gas prices, which are I should say, the transaction fees on Ethereum are so high right now, it's hard to use prediction markets. Cross-border payments is another one. This is kind of a given. Ether, which is the token that is on Ethereum, is worth money in US dollars, and you can use that to transfer it overseas for a fraction of what you'd use Western Union for. There's also tokens that are called stable coins on Ethereum, such as DAI, D-A-I, and those are pegged 1-to-1 to the US dollar. And that's important for future use cases because if you have a blockchain, the price of the token that's native to that chain is constantly fluctuating. But if you have a stable coin, I can just send 10 DAI instead of $10 with a slower transaction fees overseas, or even just from one person to another, and don't have to pay the transaction fees that sometimes come along with those kind of transactions, especially ones that are large dollar amount. Another interesting use case are DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. That's basically having your company on a blockchain where you can transparently vote and set different rules for the amount of voting power you have to enact rules and regulations about your company. There's been a few successful ones of these. Look up Moloch DAO if you're interested. It's a grant-giving DAO I'm a part of that deals with over $1 million in assets, and people submit applications, and then the decentralized group of semi-anonymous voters vote on if that grant should be given funding or not, using staking and or not staking, using their proportion of their DAO voting tokens. Identity, authentication, and law are all in progress. There are some identity use cases that have been developed, but there's not a universal one yet, or one that's widely used. Same with authentication. There's some really cool experiments I've seen, but nothing that's worth mentioning on the authentication side. I'm really looking forward to the law stuff. I think Open Law is one of the more groundbreaking organizations that are working on this. But think about not having to use a lawyer in the future and just patching together the contract you want and having it be verifiable on a blockchain, so that when you go to court, it has a time and date that it was signed, it's cryptographically sealed, and you take out these third-party intermediaries. The taking out of the third-party intermediary is what blockchain is all about. So when you're thinking of what can I use a blockchain for, just think about where a third party is taking just a cut of whatever you're trying to accomplish. Put a blockchain with smart contracts on it, and a lot of the time you can use that as the logic layer to disintermediate things. I'm going to go over the roadmap for 1.0 and 2.0 real fast. EIP 1559 is a way that we're going to change transaction fees on Ethereum. And that's not finalized yet. We're not positive we're doing it, but it's looking more and more like we will in Ethereum 1.0. It'll also make prediction of what we call the gas price more predictable. That's just a piece of the transaction fee, and help with usability when people are using Ethereum. Account abstraction. Right now we have normal accounts called externally owned accounts, which is if I open up a wallet on my phone, like a Coinbase account for Ethereum on my phone, that's a externally owned account, like a normal account. Then there's also smart contract accounts. But what if your normal account could have code on it, so that I could maybe offer to pay someone else's transaction fee for them if they try to send me Ether? That's what account abstraction accomplishes. It makes any account on the network a smart contract account if they want it to be. There's also research into optimizing the state growth problem I talked about earlier, such as regenesis and stateless Ethereum, that might also be used in Ethereum 2.0. I mentioned the phases earlier for Ethereum 2.0, just to go over some of them again. Phase 0, which is going to be before the end of this year, we launched the beacon chain, and people can start to stake Ether and get rewards. They can't withdraw those rewards yet, but or the Ether that they stake, but they can develop them over time. Phase 1, which is either in 2021 or 2022, will create shard chains. And those chains are going to allow you to kind of see what it's like to put real data on there without actually putting real data on there. It's going to have just an empty chain running. We're going to be evaluating and seeing how that works out. And then phase 2 transactions and interactions with smart contracts will actually occur on the shard chains. That's also when ETH 1.0 will merge into ETH 2.0 sometime between or during phase 1 and 2. ETH 1.0 is going to be taken into its own shard. So the entirety of what the current chain is today is going to be taken into one of those 64 shard chains. And that's going to be very cool to distribute the chain like that and make it so that people don't have to load the entire blockchain on their computer. The thing I get really excited about in Ethereum is the community aspect. We have around the world, there's a ton of Ethereum meetups. We also have a yearly conference called DevCon that's attended by thousands of people. This year was our 6th DevCon. We started at 0, so DevCon 0 through DevCon 5. This one was in Osaka, Japan. It was a lot of fun. There's also conferences in places like Paris and Toronto and Denver and New York every year, including EdCon, which happens in Toronto. In 2018, I went to that one, and that was a lot of fun. There's also ETH Taipei, which is a meetup that's really popular, and I posted a picture of that there. ETH VR 0 happened this year. I didn't attend, but I heard a lot of great things about it. Because of coronavirus, we're all stuck at home for the most part, for conference attending at least. And so having a virtual reality conference is a really neat idea, and I think that that's going to start growing in prominence. There's a lot of Ethereum VR use cases too. If you just look up ETH VR, there's some stuff you can find on that online. As far as online communities go, we're primarily concentrated in Discord chat rooms, Telegram chat rooms, WeChat chat rooms, and Twitter for short form messaging. For long form communication, we have the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians and ETH Research, which are 2 forums that deal with a lot of the lower level technical stuff. And then we have a few Ethereum Reddits, including R Ethereum, R ETH Finance, and R ETH Staker, that are more like casual, not as technical forums for dealing with Ethereum and what's happening today on it. Thanks so much for listening. I'm going to take some questions now, but I'll leave this up to go over some of my contact details. I'm on Twitter at Hudson Jameson. I have an email. It's great. I love email. I actually don't like email. If you can just do me a Twitter DM, that'd be preferred. But if you want to email me, I am Hudson at Hudson Jameson. Why did I put .org? It's .com. I'm going to fix that so that people don't email the wrong place. HudsonJameson.com. I'm also, HudsonJameson.com is my website. I have a blog on there where I talk about Ethereum and mental health and a few other things. So yeah, there's that. Let's jump into the questions. If you have any, feel free to click on track session and then type your question. Erica Salinas asks, in regards to layer 2, are there any thoughts on whether OMG Network's integration with Tether will help reduce Ethereum network congestion? Any other thoughts on big players that could move to an L2? That's a great question. So OMG Network is a layer 2 solutions house. They also have a token called the Omise Go token, OMG, that is a payment token that is used by some people. Tether is a stable coin that's used across multiple blockchains, including Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin, but definitely Tron and Ethereum. I think when it was on Bitcoin, it was on OmniLayer, so it's like technically Bitcoin-ish. As far as whether the OMG Network's scaling solution is going to help with network congestion, I believe it will. I think that the issue with layer 2 in general that's going to be a big factor here is that layer 2 solutions, you have to pay to get into them, like an entrance fee and an exit fee. Once you're in them and you're trading and you're doing things inside of them, it's going to be much easier to interact with very, very, very low fees and very quickly interact with whatever chain you're using. But to get into them, you have to pay to have that base layer security of the main Ethereum chain. So other big players that could move into L2, I'm guessing major centralized exchanges are going to be moving into layer 2. One thing that's really overlooked right now is decentralized exchanges. So there's a lot of tokens that are on Ethereum. You might have heard of ERC20 tokens, and OMG is one of those. So when you go, and Link is another one. So when you go to Coinbase or Bittrex or Binance or any of those, you have all these coins to choose from. And some of them have their own chain. So like Bitcoin and Tron and Hedera Hashgraph have their own coin. Ethereum has its own coin called Ether. But then under that, in Ethereum, because of the smart contract functionality, you can make what's called ERC20 tokens, which are sub tokens on Ethereum. So maybe I want to make my own cryptocurrency within a cryptocurrency. I can do that. So things like Chainlink with their LINK token, AmiseGo with their OMG token, they're all built on Ethereum. So these decentralized exchanges that are on Ethereum can trade Ethereum tokens very easily and usually for lower fees than centralized exchanges. And without some of the stuff with KYC AML and depending on the exchange, this isn't anything, I don't want to talk into any of the legalese about it, but basically people prefer decentralized exchanges for the cheap fees. So my thoughts on big players that can move into an L2, centralized exchanges are going to be the first ones. Beyond that, it's really up in the air. I think video games and computer games built on Ethereum are going to use layer 2 a lot. I've heard of a few doing that. So that's another idea. Paul Song asks, sounds like high gas fees may decrease ETH-DApp usage. In the future, how can we ensure gas fees are consistently low? Actually, the creator of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, made a really great Twitter post last night about this to talk about the fee problem. And in general, the idea is there's not like a golden bullet. There's not a one-size-fits-all way to do it. It's going to be a lot of different ways to improve scalability. At the base layer, that's Ethereum 2.0 and sharding, which does a 100x increase. And then 1,000x or more increase comes with these layer 2 solutions, as long as you stay within that solution. So there's multiple layer 2 solutions and not all of them are cross compatible. So it's going to be one of those VHS versus Betamax or DVD or Blu-ray versus HD DVD kind of things where we're going to see which one wins out, which one gets the most share of the network, and the other ones will kind of fizzle away is my guess. Because most people will be using a primary layer 2 scaling solution. And yeah, that's kind of how we're going to keep fees low, is by these scaling solutions. Other than that, people would just have to use Ethereum less, which is what I'm not anticipating anytime soon. There's going to be ebbs and flows for sure, but right now it's really taking off, which is great, but it also comes with high fees. Jonathan Chavez asks, are there any layer 2 solutions or even frameworks that you find especially interesting? Yes, 2 of them that I find especially interesting personally are zkSync, which is a zero-knowledge proof-based layer 2 scaling solution. Zero-knowledge proofs help with on-chain privacy of transactions. And so that I find that really interesting, to be able to not reveal what you're sending before you send it on a network, but still being able to prove you sent it. Also, Optimistic Virtual Machine, or the OVM, and Optimistic Rollups are the cutting edge, and they're supposed to be coming out with a testnet later this year. That's from the Optimism company. So if you look up Optimism Ethereum or OVM Optimism Ethereum, that will allow you to figure out a little bit more about that product. I think that optimistic zero-knowledge rollups, so optimistic ZK rollups, are going to be a thing eventually. I don't know if there's much research into that right now, but if you can have privacy-preserving transactions on Ethereum that also allow scalable transactions where you don't have to pay a ton of fees and use the base layer all the time, that's going to be really powerful. Oh, the OVM. The thing about the OVM that's really different than other things is its general purpose to the EVM. And what I mean by that is a lot of these layer 2 things can only do token transfers on layer 2. Like it's a one-trick pony. Like it only has one type of thing that it can do. With OVM, it generalizes anything you can do on the EVM with smart contracts, you can do in an OVM environment and using the same tools like MetaMask and MyCrypto. So it's a really powerful thing. And I think that's going to be the one that wins out if I had to pick one. But that's a personal opinion. That's not like anything that has to do with the Ethereum Foundation in general. The Ethereum Foundation has given grants to a number of layer 2 solutions, I believe the OVM being one of them, and ZK Sync. Have you heard of a project based in Central Europe called PRUN or PRUN? I believe I have. I think that they were going to work with the Ethereum Classic team, actually, Jonathan, on something, but I could be completely wrong there. I don't have familiarity with it. Heen says, for a beginner, where do you recommend to start to be an expert in blockchain? All the notions, techno to master. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. The number one thing for Ethereum is going to ethereum.org. They're also revamping their developer portal over the next few months, but ethereum.org has a lot of really cool, here, let me, oh wait, can I cancel out of this? It's not letting me click. There we go. Okay, so ethereum.org was recently revamped and it looks really cool now. And it has a lot of stuff about getting started. So it goes over what Ethereum is, how to get it, how to use it, what wallets are available. There's guides and resources that's really expansive and has a lot of links. For getting started, you can open up a web IDE called Ethereum Studio and create a token or an NFT or do a Hello World style program right from your browser. So it's really cool to get started using Ethereum Studio. There's also a developer resources section that has smart contract language guides, IDEs for Azure, Visual Code, stuff like that, development frameworks that you can use that has testing built in, just all kinds of stuff. So that's where I would recommend people get started. Let's see. What are some challenges and difficulties with ETH2? Oh, there are a ton. So a lot of the challenges are this is a new frontier. That's kind of the I guess summary is that a lot of this is untested waters. Not having enough validators is a problem we don't anticipate enough to have. Having too many isn't a problem. But having the validators go offline, like if a lot go offline at once, we found in a test net recently that if a lot of validators go offline, then they can cause problems on the network that can be rectified and the network can recover from. But yeah, that's one of the problems. The other one is client diversity. Ethereum, unlike Bitcoin that has one client that is the specification, Ethereum has multiple clients that make up a separate specification. So all the clients are looking at a specification instead of everyone looking to one client. The reason for that is if one client has a bug in it and goes down or can't operate, then the other clients can pick up the slack, basically. There is a Dallas blockchain meetup. I don't know if it's active right now. I used to run it in 2015 to 2016. But if anyone wants to get that started again, I can get you in touch with the organizers that were doing it most recently. So reach out. Yeah, is there a group meeting in Dallas area for those interested? Yeah, it's going to be the meetup.com meetup. Any updates on Swarm? Seems like IPFS has become the default decentralized storage. Hey, Cole, how's it going? Me and Cole Davis. Cole Davis is a cool guy if y'all ever get to meet him. So IPFS is launching Filecoin soon. That is different than IPFS is my understanding, but it's very similar. Swarm is still going. It's using independent funding now. I don't believe it's under the Ethereum Foundation under a grant anymore, as far as I know. And it's still being built. I'm not super in tune with the updates on that. As far as Austin Akers asked, what are some tools you recommend that are optimal for Ethereum development? I can go back to the Ethereum.org page. And if I go to developer resources, Truffle and Waffle and Embark are going to be the ones I've used before. I don't know what Epirus is, but it looks like it's Java based. There's also debugging tools like Etherline that are important. Let's see. Yeah, anything on the developer page, I would recommend. Brownie is a Python-based testing tool. The really cool thing is there's been these tools that are developed in like Java and Python and C++ even, I think, and other languages, .NET, so that if you're whatever language you're used to, you can interact with Ethereum really easily. The authentication I was talking about earlier, this is Taurus, a single sign-on solution for account resolvers that's fully open source. There's also front-end JavaScript APIs. Web3.js and Ethers.js are the two popular ones. There's also wrappers around Web3 and TypeScript, and also back-end APIs that people use in order to help develop the Ethereum better. Is it mandatory to know JavaScript to be a blockchain dev? No, it's not. You only have to know Solidity. To interact with Solidity, people use JavaScript, so you do need to know a little bit, I guess. So I take that back. You need to know like the basics of JavaScript, but you don't need to know like JavaScript up and down. It's good if you do, because Solidity reminds me of JavaScript a lot, but otherwise that's not the case. And back to the Swarm question, there's a storage section on the developers page on Ethereum.org that has IPFS, Swarm, and OrbitDB, which is three things that are important when you're looking at decentralized storage for your decentralized app that you're building on something like Ethereum. I've run out of time. Again, here's my contact information if anyone's interested. I want to thank everyone for coming out today. It looks like we had at least 45 people watching me. That's weird. We're going to be talking in 15 minutes at the, I think it's called the Blockchain Platforms Panel Discussion with myself, Michael Lulin from Tarski Technologies moderating, Mance Harmon from Hedera Hashgraph, Kieran Lubin from Block Apps, and Paige Krieger from IBM Blockchain. We're all going to be talking for a little bit about our different blockchain solutions and comparing and contrasting. So please show up to that. That's at 1:30 today, so about 15 minutes from now. Otherwise, I think that's all my time. So thank you all so much for showing up and for asking your questions. Please feel free to reach out. I'd love to introduce you to the community if you have any interest in joining, email or Twitter. Thank you all.
Hey everyone, we'll see you in the next session. Thanks, Hudson.